So, at many points throughout our lives, we are all tested. This could be figuratively, or in this case, literally. Be it a test that sometimes we are given a week or even months to prepare and study for, and at times we have something known as a pop quiz. Now, when it comes to the cruise ship industry, there are things known as inspections. And these inspections are happening at random. They come out of nowhere, and the cruise lines have zero time to be prepared for them. Now, when a cruise ship passes a certain test, well, of course, it is a great thing. But when you fail that test, especially when it's of the health variety like it is in this particular video that we're going to talk about, it's not exactly a good thing. I'll explain, as this is what happened to a very popular and large cruise ship. When it comes to the cruise ship industry operating within the United States, there are two types of tests that take place in the form of health inspections to a certain degree. If you are a passenger, only one of these matters to you. But if you are a crew member, we have something known as cabin inspections. These do pop up at random, or we may potentially have around 24 hours or less to prepare our room for the inspection. When they come into our room, they check to make sure we don't have any contraband in there. Plugs plugged into the outlet that shouldn't be there, no electronics that shouldn't be there, like curling irons and stuff of that nature, no food or animals because, well, believe it or not, there are people that bring things on board like tropical animals. There was once a person that I know, I won't say their name, that brought a lizard on board and kept it pet. True story. Now, that's not something you have to worry about because if somebody, let's say a crew member, fails a cabin inspection, it's not that big of a deal, except for that crew member. They may face things like potential termination depending on the severity of the situation. They may lose their guest privileges. They may lose some type of privilege that they were allotted because they were actually following the rules. However, when you're talking about a health inspection for an entire cruise ship, in this case, we have the shipping company for you commoners. I call it the Mafia Shipping Company for many of reasons. Well, they had a pop quiz, a health inspection by the CDC, which is a name, an organization we haven't heard of in quite some time since the COVID era. That's the Centers for Disease Control in the United States. Well, legally, every single cruise ship operating within the United States has to take at least two tests, two health inspections prior to being able to sail throughout the year. And should they fail the inspection, well, it's not going to turn out so great. We have the MSC Seaside that is currently operating 3, 4, and 7-night sailings out of Port Canaveral, Florida. That ship was launched in the year 2017, so it's not a little ship by any means, and it holds up to 4,000 passengers. Well, they had a health inspection recently, and, well, they flunked with flying colors. Now, just for context, the biannual pop quiz health inspection that takes place by the CDC on board cruise ships goes on a 100-point scoring scale. 100 being, of course, a perfect score, and well, anything below that, just think of it like, let's say, how we had in grade school, if you went to grade school in the United States, a 90 to 100 is like an A, and then the 80s are a B, the 60s and all that are C and below. Well, just think of it, but a little bit more serious. The MSC Seaside scored a 67 out of 100, giving them ultimately and unfortunately a failing grade. Now, what's crazy about this is that since 2017, there's only been 3 cruise ships, ranging from Princess Cruises to Uncruised Adventures, that have had a failing grade, and well, it wasn't even close to the 67 score, which obviously is not good. A passing score when it comes to the CDC health inspection would be a 85 or above. Now again, when you compare this to grade school, obviously that's a B or higher. So usually, let's say like a C in that area range would still be considered passing, D in some cases. However, as you could imagine, for, of course, safety and health reasons, things are a little bit more strict. And yes, it can be stressful on the crew, but a lot of it is naturally understandable when you're talking about things in regards to health and what we've dealt with in previous years, COVID and GI outbreaks and all the nasty stuff and little giblets that take place on board cruise ships. Just to be clear though, however, I still would agree, and many of you out there would as well, that have actually sailed on cruise ships, not just it's all hearsay, where you hear that cruise ships are, well, what's the famous term, petri dishes and all that. I do not believe that by any means whatsoever, and I want to make that very clear. But speaking of dishes, this is part of the reason that the MSC side did unfortunately fail their test. Well, it's a myriad of reasons. For starters, the biggest infraction was the fact that an inspector witnessed a crew member firsthand take some raw meat and put it inside of, I believe, the freezer, transport it without even washing their hands first. There are other infractions like flies being around and hovering around the food on board. However, they're flies, they're going to get other places. So you take what you want with that information. I do understand also the reason for, well, them getting knocked down a grade or two for that reason. There's also talks of dry and even wet food residue on clean dishes and plates over by the pizza area and over in the teppanyaki area on board. They're also stating that, well, there is like wet water residue over by the storage departments for the food in the galley areas. That's where they prepare all the food. So, yeah, as you could imagine, that would probably send like some kind of sense of disgust down a lot of people's spines when they hear about this on board the MSC side. Playing devil's advocate here, many could potentially argue, regardless of the credibility of the CDC, because I'll leave that to personal preference, many would say that scoring a 100 is probably somewhat impossible to do. However, there are plenty of cruise lines out there that have overcome the challenges and scored a 100%, a perfect score when it comes to the random health inspections taking place on board cruise ships. One of which being the happiest cruise line on earth, Disney. But you know, as they say, sometimes in life, or most cases, you get what you paid for. Or rather, Disney gets what they paid for. No, I'm joking. I'm not saying that Disney is paying the inspectors or anything like that. I would imagine that if you're going to pay that insane price for a 3-day cruise in the range of $6,000 or $7,000 for a Disney cruise, and well, I would hope that everything is in tip-top shape. We also have Celebrity Cruises that has many of their ships that are also scoring 100%, and even Carnival. So when you think about it from that perspective, well, you can see there is a range from the, let's say, basic cruise lines out there to the premium that are still scoring 100%, even when the tests are random on board. Being 100% transparent with all of you, I have said on many occasions that MSC, the Mafia Shipping Company, is by no means my favorite cruise line. However, I know they do have the money, the capital to take over the entire cruise ship industry with an iron fist at any point in time, because MSC is not only a cruise line, they are the largest shipping company in the entire world. So they can make changes if they need to. Now, regardless of all of that, because I've even said at points in times that, well, I wouldn't even sail MSC anymore unless I had a legitimate reason to do so. For example, like the World Europa, they have other ships coming out. Or I do like sailing with them outside of the U.S. Their integration in trying to, well, capture the U.S. market, to me, is just kind of all over the place as of late. Their ships are absolutely gorgeous. And if they were one of my favorites, would this deter me from potentially sailing with them? In my personal opinion, no, not really. As you can see, aside from like the raw meat situation, I don't really see it as a big deal. Flies can get virtually anywhere at any point in time. Maybe that is an actual issue. Maybe it isn't. I don't know. I'll leave that up to you guys. Again, it comes down to personal preference. I do have to ask all of you guys, as we wrap this thing up, how do you feel about this particular situation, this failing score with MSC on the seaside? Would this deter you from cruising with them? Yay, nay? Let me know in the comment section below. By the way, before we start arguing MSC's capabilities and which cruise line is better and how MSC could be at the top, I was somewhat joking. I do believe that MSC has the money, and if they can figure out a system that is able to capture the American audience, because let's be real, if you look at their prices, they're extremely competitive, very, very tempting. We know their ships are beautiful. I just think personally for me, things on the operational end do need some, well, tinkering with here and there. But if they did that, then, well, they could definitely be, they already are a top contender. But I do believe they could be near the top as far as a cruising option for many, because there are people out there, even in the U.S., even though they're still somewhat adapting, that are, they're one of their favorites. There is no doubt about it. But either way, guys, of course, like I said, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I know this video is relatively quick. I got to get out of here. Today is my final day. I will be getting my PADI scuba diving open water certification. And I think today I'm going to vlog a little bit. I'll put it on my other channel, Jay the Nomad. So make sure you guys go check that out. Subscribe to it. As usual, know that I love and appreciate every single one of you. Of course, hit that like button on your way out. And, well, I'll see you later. Take it easy.